Deep in the forests of Montana, a research facility with no place on maps was quietly shut down years ago. Ignored in official records, this place was known as Site 9, or as much as those who knew kept silent. When independent journalist Logan Pierce stepped into this forgotten structure, following a mysterious clue, he would be forced to uncover not only a dark past but also the limits of his own reality. Some sounds echo, some reflections return, and some doors were meant to stay closed forever. If you liked the video and subscribe to the channel, let's move on to our story. Enjoy watching. Outside, as the narrow mountain road cutting through northern Montana faded into the night, Logan Pierce left the engine of his rented Jeep idling. The auburn tones of his hair, leaning toward brown, were only visible under the dim glow of the dashboard lights. The exhaustion on his face was the inevitable cost of months spent as a freelance journalist. But what truly kept him going was the anonymous email he had received 3 days earlier. Search for Site 9. Find its files. Some doors were meant to stay closed forever. The message had no subject, no sender. The only attachment was a scanned image of a dried, brown piece of paper with coordinates scribbled on it. Logan's instincts told him this wasn't just another hoax. The journalist's wrong hunches had nearly cost him his life a few times before, but the right ones had led him to award-winning interviews and major exposés. Which would prevail this time? He stepped out of the Jeep and advanced with his headlamp on, pushing through rigid pine branches. Despite it being July, the night air read -8 degrees Celsius. Montana's mountain slopes always had a way of catching people off guard. The moon had disappeared behind the clouds, and the wind added a sinister hiss to the dried forest branches. Logan was as familiar with this howling as he was with the metallic screech that rose from the filthy subway tracks of New York, but this time, there was no warmth of city noise. Here he was alone. After about 10 minutes of walking, a moss-covered wire fence emerged between the trees. On top of the fence, a rusted sign reading U.S. Federal Property, and No Trespassing hung tilted. Logan grabbed the bolt cutters he had brought to sever the barbed upper wires. The snapping sound of the wires spread into the night like a coarse whisper, as if even the forest objected to this unauthorized entry. The concrete path leading to Site 9's main complex was riddled with cracks, with layers of dried moss hanging from the corners. With each step, the broken wires of old security lights swung back and forth, producing metallic clinks like slamming doors in the wind. By the time Logan reached the single-story prefabricated administrative building, the frames of the wooden shutters were on the verge of rotting. The door, apparently made of solid oak, was fastened with a rusted padlock, but the lock was broken, the chain loose. Someone had already entered not too long ago. As he stepped inside, no motion sensor lights came on. The power must have been cut years ago. Logan's headlamp lit the corridor walls, revealing faded posters and emergency fire plans. Mold had crept across the ceiling tiles like lace, and the floor was covered with plaster dust resembling sand. But what was more disturbing than the dust were the footprints. Small, circular rubber sole prints, likely from lab-style protective boots. The prints led into the darkness of the east wing. Logan hung his DSLR camera around his neck and photographed the tracks. The burst of the flash made the shadows flicker, as if they moved for just a second. His heart sped up. There was no phone signal within these thick walls. His satellite phone was back in the car. "Is this a mistake?" he muttered unconsciously. The question echoed again and again through the empty corridor. When he reached the double doors of the east wing, there was a single sentence written at eye level with black marker. "Turn back. Now." The letters were messy but determined. The ink had bled into the door's rusted surface, dripping almost like tears. Logan's mind immediately recalled the line from the email. Some doors were meant to stay closed forever. A dry knot formed in his throat. But his journalistic curiosity outweighed his fear. He reached for the handle, but the metal was unusually warm, as if something inside was still operational. Logan hesitated for a moment. When he pulled his hand back, he felt a faint burning sensation seeping through his glove to his skin. Unlike the frigid night outside, the door gave a silent vow that there was still life behind it. He pulled out his portable recorder from his shoulder bag and began documenting aloud, from the point where the Jeep had been up to this very moment. Then he took a deep breath and whispered into the recorder, describing the smell of rust leaking through the cracks and the crackling of wires in the background. "If this tape is found," he said in a hushed voice. Logan Pierce, July 4, 2025, disappeared at the Site 9 coordinates. He hesitated between pushing and pulling the door. Finally he leaned his body forward and pushed. The high-pitched creak of the hinges rang out and vibrated through Logan's organs. A dark laboratory, scattered file folders, toppled stainless steel counters, and on the floor, arranged in a circular formation side by side, were vault-sized metal crates. Next to the first crate was a note, painted in fluorescent green and attached to a plaque as thin as paper. Echo Protocol, April 17, 2012. Look at your reflection before entering the test. If it's looking back at you, it's already too late. Logan looked up. Broken mirrors were hung side by side on the ceiling. The beam of his lamp multiplied and fractured among the reflections, sending his face back to him in dozens of broken pieces. And in that moment he saw it. The reflection at the very back blinked half a second after he did. The journalist staggered backward. His camera swung from his neck and struck the edge of one of the crates, creating a deep, echoing thud. In that moment, a single sentence rang in his mind. This discovery won't be a news story, it'll be your obituary. Logan, with trembling fingers, stopped the recording. The dark corridor ahead hid the broken tubes of dead fluorescence, and Logan knew now that he had long since lost the luxury of turning back. He took a deep breath. His vocal cords were dry. The wind clashing above transformed into the growl of a howling creature on the metal roof. He forced his knees forward and stepped into the darkness where echoes ruled. Sometimes a journalist's curiosity forces open doors that should never be opened. Tonight, Logan Pierce opened that door, forever. Inside the laboratory, a heavy silence hung in the air. As Logan Pierce's footsteps echoed over broken glass and crushed papers, it was as if every sound was competing with its own echo. The dust in the air swirled like invisible ghosts under the light of his headlamp. Everything was abandoned, yes, but with a strange kind of awareness. Logan opened the first metal crate with his gloved hands. Inside were matte gray discs, each resting in padded compartments. Every one of them was palm-sized, marked only with a serial number and a small laser-etched label. E-Node X13. A yellow tag beside them bore a note. To be operated only in approved psychocognitive environments. Avoid direct gaze. Logan swore under his breath as he wiped dust from the word psychocognitive. He had only seen that term before in academic psychiatry journals. This wasn't an ordinary experiment, it was a project involving manipulation of mental perception. Maybe even something more. He returned the discs to their place and moved toward the eastern part of the lab. The corridor split into two paths here. The left wing seemed to lead to an area with massive cooling system fans, but it was the writing above the door on the right that caught his attention. Authorized personnel only, sublevel access. The door was made of heavy steel. An old retinal scanner was mounted on it, though it looked like it hadn't worked in years. Logan noticed a panel on the left side had been skillfully removed. The wires inside were delicately stripped, the circuit shorted, and the security system bypassed. Someone had opened this door. Could that someone still be inside? Logan sighed, then pulled out a notebook. He quickly jotted down what he had seen and the coordinates. This investigation wouldn't mean much if he just entered. It had to end with evidence. But something inside was warning him. This wasn't just the feeling of abandonment. It felt as if the facility itself was aware and watching. Passing through the steel door felt like crossing into another world. A spiral staircase led downward. The walls were concrete, painted with old codes. A01, Echo Station, Level B2. Each floor grew darker than the last. When he finally reached Level B2, a strange smell hit his nose. Metal and something else. A mix of old sweat and medicine clinging to the skin. At the end of the corridor was a heavy door, wider, thicker than the others. On it just one phrase. Do not open. Echo room, isolation required. In the center of the door there was a small observation window. As Logan approached it, he realized the room beyond was dark. But when he aimed his light through the glass he saw, just a few meters ahead, a desk, and an open notebook on top. A chair had been knocked over behind it. And something else. In the corner of the room stood a still silhouette. Logan blinked. Is that a person? He whispered. When he pointed the light at it again, the silhouette was suddenly gone. Goosebumps rose all over his body. His heart pounded. That "That's not possible," he muttered barely audibly. And yet, he reached for the door handle. This time it wasn't cold. In fact, it was warm. Suddenly, a sound echoed from the corridor behind him. A deep, mechanical click. As if another door had opened, or a mechanism had activated. Logan turned, swept his light around. No one was there. But from deep within the facility, a hum had begun to rise. As if a system dormant for years had come back to life. And the worst part, it wasn't by Logan's will. It was something else's. Steadying himself, he turned his attention back to the door in front of him. The access system wasn't active. But the hinges were trembling slightly. Is this door opening on its own? Logan took a step back. The door slowly creaked open. No hand reached out. No creature jumped forth. But Logan felt something seep outward from the room. Emptiness. A deep, humming, oppressive void. Looking inside, he saw the chair still on the floor, and the pages of the notebook flipping on their own. There was no wind. In fact, it felt like there was no air at all. Logan slowly stepped inside. The echo of his footsteps on the tiled floor multiplied unnaturally. With each step, another step seemed to follow. But there were no reflections. No shadows moving. Only the footsteps, and Logan's heartbeat. When he reached the desk, the notebook on top read, Echo Protocol, log 001 / Dr. Everett Hale. Logan squinted and looked at the first page. Only a single sentence was written. We studied the reflections. But some of them looked back. And just then, a whisper from behind the notebook made him flinch. This wasn't an echo. It was a voice. Logan. The notebook's pages crackled between Logan's fingers. Each line revealed the staggering scale of the experiments conducted at Site 9. Dr. Everett Hale's handwriting resembled less a scientific record and more a confession. Log 001, March 2012. A reflection is not merely a refraction of light. A reflection is the echo of a being on another plane. The Echo Protocol will not just record this echo, it will isolate it. As he flipped through the pages, the tone began to shift. What started as academic, sterile, and technical soon became disorganized, filled with misspelled words and overlapping lines. Hale's mind had begun to unravel as the experiments progressed. And Logan could feel it, not just through the words but in the trembling of his hands holding the notebook. We thought we were watching. But they were watching us first. Logan placed the notebook in his bag and rummaged through the desk drawers. One was locked. Pressing on the hinge with a piece of metal, he heard a soft click. Inside was a mini cassette recorder. A yellow sticky note was attached. Audio logs, Test 03, Operator 2, Dr. Hale. Logan's hand trembled as he reached for the device. He plugged in his own in-ear headphones and pressed play. Dr. Hale. This is the third test. Today the reflection responded to direct questions. I'm not controlling it anymore. It's asking its own questions now. Long silence, then a faint whisper. The reflection. Which Hale are you? The real one, or the one who thinks? Hale. No. No, this isn't possible. This is just sound. It's only sound. Logan removed the earphones. His forehead was drenched in cold sweat. This couldn't just be the hallucinations of a man gone mad. That voice, he felt it wasn't artificial. There was something wrong in its tone. Not human. Not fully. More like an echo of one. And now that presence wasn't just speaking to Hale. It was speaking to him. Just then, the sound of glass cracking echoed behind him. Logan spun around. One of the mirrors surrounding the room, the one in the upper right corner of the ceiling, was cracked. And behind the crack, he couldn't see his own reflection. The reflection was there, yes. But it was late. It blinked. Logan hadn't. He stepped back. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. And in that fractured reflection, he noticed something unsettling. Its expression wasn't mirroring his fear. It showed anticipation. Like it had been waiting for him. For years. He looked at the rusty metal panel beneath the mirror's edge and saw a small card slot. Etched beneath it were the words, Echo Chamber Log Feed. Access requires operator badge. Logan realized then he had to make a choice. Technically he could still turn back. But the answers, the truth were buried down here. He looked at the notebooks in his bag, the audio logs, the journal, and whispered to himself, if I turn back now, the real story dies with me. At that moment, A motion-activated light at the far end of the corridor turned on by itself. Logan froze. He checked his steps. He hadn't gone that way. It wasn't him. Suddenly, footsteps echoed. Rhythmic, steady, human. But no echo. Only silence behind the steps. Logan felt his insides freeze. He held his breath and pressed the rec button on the recorder in his hand. Then the whisper returned. But this time it wasn't just in his ears. It was in his mind. Your reflection isn't inside. It wants out. The corridor lights flickered, then revealed a silhouette. Taller than Logan. Its head tilted slightly. The face was obscured. But the silhouette's shoulders. It wore his backpack. His jacket. The same stance. But the wrong time. Logan stepped back. The silhouette stepped forward. Only a few meters between them. Logan blinked. And it vanished. Left behind on the floor was a badge. Dr. E. Hale, Operator ID, 004. Logan picked it up. He wanted to see his reflection in the metal surface of the badge. But he couldn't. Only darkness stared back. As Logan Pierce gripped Dr. Hale's badge tightly, a deep chill ran through him. The coldness of the metal now carried the sense that he, too, had been recognized by the system. The badge was a key, one that unlocked a closed loop. A loop that was never meant to be reopened. When he inserted the badge into the card slot next to the mirrored panel, a short mechanical sound played. A click followed by a low-pitched hum. Mechanical click and hum. The LED on the panel turned green. An old interface lit up on the screen. The header read, Echo Room Log Feed, Personal ID confirmed, Operator 004. Old security camera feeds began loading one by one. Black and white, full of static. Some were dated as far back as 2012. But what truly stopped Logan was a timestamp in the top corner of one video. July 3, 2025, 3:41 a.m. Logan glanced at the screen's corner. The current time, 3:39 a.m. This recording hadn't happened yet. With hesitation he pressed play. The footage began. The camera showed a spot just a few meters ahead in the corridor he was standing in. At the far end of the hallway, a man entered the frame. Same backpack. Same jacket. Same walking pattern. Logan was watching himself. But the footage kept going. The Logan in the video approached a door at the end of the hall, turned his head as if listening for something, then slowly turned back. And then, on the screen, Logan didn't look at the camera. He looked into Logan. Like he was staring straight into his soul. He smiled. The real Logan gripped the edge of the metal chair, struggling to steady his breath. No, this recording can't be real. It's a simulation, right? But the system had registered new data. Recording source, camera number 12, Echo Room Zone B. Feed type, direct reflection mapping. Classification, previous echo. Previous? A cold wave hit Logan's chest. This reflection wasn't showing something he would do. It was something he had already done. But he hadn't. Not yet. Or maybe it had happened. Just not to this Logan. A ringing began in his ears. Suddenly everything started to spin. One of the feeds on the screen began to flicker. Camera number 8, storage B7. The brightness flared, then went completely dark, replaced by text. We are watching you. Then. Your arrival was not a choice. But your exit will be a message. And at that moment all the lights in the facility went out. Darkness. Total darkness. Logan instinctively turned on his headlamp. The first thing the light revealed, just a few meters ahead, was a silhouette on the wall. Humanoid. Motionless. As Logan took trembling steps backward, the silhouette moved. Not a shadow. It had depth. But it cast no reflection, no shadow of its own. It existed, yet light could not define it. Logan's mind tried to reject it. This is a hallucination, a panic attack, lack of oxygen. But then he heard them. The whispers. This time they were clear. Distinct. Not from around him. From inside his mind. Different voices layered atop one another. Some familiar. Some foreign. But one of them sounded like his mother. You didn't choose this, Logan. But they chose you. Logan dropped to his knees, covering his ears, gasping for breath. But the voices didn't stop. Site 9 doesn't just want data. It wants your possibility. Logan slowly lifted his head. The silhouette was gone. But in the distance, A red emergency light had turned on at the end of the corridor. Beneath it, glowing text had appeared. Exit protocol. Logan stood up. It was a sign of escape. But he understood now. Site 9 wasn't merely giving him information. It was shaping him. And each reflection was rewriting his reality. Every threshold pulled him further away from what was real. He gripped the only thing he had left, Dr. Hale's notebook. But he realized the cover had changed. It was no longer dark gray. It was jet black. And new writing had appeared on the front. Echo Protocol, log 005//operator, L. Pierce. Logan was no longer just an observer of the experiment. He was now officially part of it. The Echo Protocol had accepted him. And this acceptance came with no way out. As Logan Pierce followed the exit protocol light down the dark corridor, he glanced once more at the new inscription on the cover of the notebook. Log 005//operator, L. Pierce. It meant that Site 9 no longer recognized him as an outside observer. He was now a participant. The Echo Protocol wasn't just an experiment, it was a system of succession. And he had just become the next link in its chain. At the end of the corridor stood a door resembling an elevator. One word was painted on it in peeling, faded letters. Core. When he opened the door, the room before him looked nothing like the rest of the facility. It was pristine. The power still worked. The lights were steady, the space organized as if life still lingered here. Tables were neatly arranged. Equipment was in place. And at the center of the room, positioned before a semicircle of monitors, was a glass observation chamber. Someone was sitting behind the glass. Logan squinted. Tall, slender, dressed in a white lab coat. Their head tilted slightly downward, eyes fixed on the monitors, as if they had never left. As if they had been waiting. Logan approached the observation room's entrance. The door was ajar. When he stepped inside, a strange scent hit his nose, a mix of ozone and the musky smell of old books. Then he looked at the monitors. Each one showed him. Different times. Different angles. Different states of mind. One showed his current self. Another the moment he first entered Site 9. And another, one that hadn't happened, displayed him with bloodied hands, writing something into the notebook, eyes hollow and distant. Then one of the monitors went dark. Slowly an image appeared. A face. Thin. Wrinkled. Wearing glasses. Gray hair. Dr. Everett Hale. But the idea that he could still be alive was impossible. Logan called out. Dr. Hale? Is that you? The man slowly lifted his head. When his eyes met Logan's, there was an eerie calm on his face. A few seconds passed in silence, then Hale spoke. I saw your name added to the file. Pierce, the new operator. They chose you. Logan took a step forward. Who are they? Who are you? Are you still alive or is this just another echo? Hale adjusted his glasses, then looked at one of the monitors. I'm alive. But where I live now is not time. Echo breaks time. It reflects the mind. I stayed here. Inside my own echo. I couldn't escape. I had to answer them. Logan's head began to spin. What do they want? Why did they choose me? Hale let out a dry, echoless laugh. Because you looked, not just at the notes, but at your reflection. The moment eye contact is made, echo engages. From now on, you won't forget who you are, but you will live what you are not. Suddenly, whispers returned, this time, layered over Hale's voice. Another voice joined in. A woman. Cold. Monotone. Logan Pierce, Echo Type 2 subject, cognitive link 86%, reflection match initiated. Hale suddenly pointed at the monitors. Look, he cried. Every possibility you've never lived is here. The day you killed yourself. The one time you survived. The time you killed me. The time you saved me, they're all here. Echo won't test you. Echo will collide with you. Logan stepped back. But Hale's eyes were welling with tears now. As if he hadn't spoken to anyone in years. He whispered. Echo doesn't just observe. Echo remembers. It knows you before you know yourself. It lives inside you. And in the end, it becomes you. At that moment, one of the monitors exploded. Sparks flew. An alarm blared. Alarm sound begins. Hale stood, but his movements were off, unnatural. Like his body wasn't fully his. His face twitched, his eyes went blurry, then changed. Logan stepped back. Hale's face had transformed into his own. Same expression. Same eyes. But distorted. As if seen through a broken reflection. Echo is riding you, Logan. Echo will replace you. Suddenly the ground trembled. The lights in the room flickered violently. Hale's silhouette began to warp, dissolving into the darkness. Logan panicked, stumbling backward. The glass observation room began to collapse. Concrete chunks rained from the ceiling. He ran, sprinting into the corridor, alarms screaming around him. Alarm crescendos. And as he escaped into the hallway, one last monitor stared at him. Operator Logan Pierce has entered the Echo Core. We are now generating his reflection. Return is no longer possible. Logan Pierce's lungs burned with each breath in the thick air of the concrete tunnels. He had thrown himself through a narrow passage just as the observation room collapsed behind him. The ground still trembled, and the distant screech of grinding metal echoed through the facility like a screaming beast. GPS was useless. There was no map. But his instincts and the last log in the notebook guided him. All protocols begin in the mirror room. Every echo first sees itself there. He descended a narrow staircase. With each step, the lights above flickered out one by one, the darkness rising like floodwater up to his knees. At the bottom he reached a large metal door. This time there was no label. Just scratches. Like claw marks. Some had dug deep into the steel. There was no handle. But as Logan approached, the door slid open. Silently. Almost gently. When he stepped inside, silence was not what greeted him. There was a low, vibrating hum, deep and wordless, buzzing at the edges of thought. It wasn't mechanical. Felt like a thought speaking outward. The room was circular. Walls and ceiling, entirely covered in mirrors. As Logan moved, his reflections moved with him. But sometimes, not at the same time. He took a step. So did they. But one of them, the third to the right, was a beat late. And its eyes weren't on him. They were looking at another reflection to the left. Logan's throat went dry. This isn't a test, he whispered to himself. It's a trap. Slowly he moved toward the center of the room. A circular platform waited there. At its heart, a chair. Tall-backed. Metal-framed. Next to it, a strange headset attachment. It looked like medical equipment. He opened the notebook. On the last page, Hale's frantic handwriting read, I sat. I looked at myself. But I forgot who I was. Now I am only Echo. Logan took an involuntary step closer to the chair. A voice inside screamed, Don't sit. But his legs kept moving. His heart pounded in his chest. Cold sweat rolled down his forehead. His eyes fought not to look into the mirrors, but the reflections. They were looking at him. They were smiling. Some were furious. One was crying. One was covered in blood. But they were all Logan. The moment he sat, the system activated. The headset arms clamped down, over his shoulders, temples, and forehead. The room dimmed. The mirrors went black. A screen flickered. Reflection match initiated. And then, silence. But it wasn't from outside. It was inside him. For a moment, Logan forgot everything. His name. Where he was. Why he was there. There were only images now. His own face. His mother's voice. A childhood memory, a shattered window, a rock in his hand. Then he heard a voice. A woman's voice. Monotone and muffled. Logan Pierce. 0 point active. Suddenly the mirrors lit up again. But now they didn't show him. They showed other lives. Other Logans. One was a schoolteacher. Another died in the military. One held a patient's hand in a psychiatric ward. And one was burning Site 9 to the ground. Logan closed his eyes. But the images seeped in. Into his mind. It was as if he were being asked to choose. But which life was his? Which one was the real Logan? The woman's voice returned. Make a choice. Stay or erase the echo. But remember, every echo you erase takes a piece of you. Logan screamed. I'm the real one. But the reflections laughed in unison. Same voice. Same tone. A perfect echoing mockery. You are merely the chosen variant. We were the real ones. You're just the one who arrived too late. And then, one final sentence rang through Logan's mind. In his own voice. But from somewhere else. One who stares too long at his own reflection, eventually sees only that. When Logan opened his eyes, he was out of the chair. But the mirror room was empty. There were no reflections. And for the first time when he looked into the glass, he couldn't see his face at all. This chapter marks the peak of Logan's psychological disintegration. He's passed a boundary from which there may be no return, lost not only in the facility but in his identity. His reflections are no longer mirrors. They are doors to truths, to lies, and to versions of himself he never chose, but now must live with. When Logan Pierce stepped out of the mirror room, his pupils struggled to adjust to the light. But the problem wasn't the light, it was the reality of the light. The corridor had changed. The structures he had seen before were gone. He was sure he had walked the same path, but now the walls looked different. It was as if reality had swapped places with the architecture in his memory. Instead of metal paneling, the surfaces were now covered in a smooth, almost bone-like texture. And the ceiling, there was no ceiling anymore. Above him stretched a pitch-black void. Echo was no longer just a system. Echo had become space. Logan walked. Not quickly. Because now he didn't know where he was going. In fact, he didn't even know what was forward and what was back. There was only one direction, exit. But the doors were gone. The coordinates blurred. Then a voice announcement echoed. Muffled, metallic, and uncertain. Exit protocol initiated. All active variants will be terminated. Exit is not possible unless operator 005 is excluded. Logan stopped. Unless excluded. That meant Logan was now part of the system. To escape, he had to become unrecognized by it. In other words, he had to exit himself. At the end of the corridor, a heavy steel door appeared. Stamped with a repeating symbol, 3 interlocking circles. The symbol of echo. As Logan approached, the door opened by itself, and the smoke that leaked inside felt like a warning from another world. There was only one table in the room. On it, a recording device. Beside it, an empty chair. And behind it, barely visible but familiar to Logan, a presence. Dr. Everett Hale. But this time not like a human. Hale's body appeared transparent, as if his veins were filled with liquid light. He had no eyes, yet he was seeing Logan. Hale didn't speak. But a whisper echoed in Logan's mind. The only way out of echo is to complete it. Logan approached the table. The recorder was active. The screen read, Final log, operator Logan Pierce. Witness statement initiated for closure. Logan reached for the device. But his fingers were trembling. Before he started the recording, the reflections appeared one by one. Even though there were no mirrors in the room, the reflections were speaking. One was screaming. Another praying. One was writing in the notebook. One committing suicide. Another running. But none of them were escaping. And in the very center, one more reflection, seated. Eyes closed, head tilted. Silent. Logan turned on the microphone. His voice was muted. Just like Hale's had been. Just like the echoes he had heard before. I am Logan Pierce. I entered Site 9. Not by mistake. Out of curiosity. But unknowingly. Echo recognized me. And I recognized it. His eyes had filled with tears. In the darkness, there was only his voice, the trembling recorder, and a red light leaking from somewhere in the wall. If this recording is found, echo is not a system. It is a gaze, an echo. And that echo is no longer empty. It has filled with me. He stopped the recording. And at that moment, the ground shook. The entire facility trembled. Cracks began to crawl down from above. Lines on the floor lit up in red. And then a new announcement echoed. Exit protocol confirmed. Operator 005 is unrecognizable. System is being evacuated. Unrecognizable. That meant Logan had become a stranger, even to the system itself. The doors opened. Only one. At the end of the corridor. It led to the sky. The real sky. Logan didn't run. He walked slowly. With each step, the facility shook harder. Behind him, the walls were collapsing. Hale's final reflection dimmed. And then, disappeared. When Logan stepped outside, the morning light blinded him. The sky truly existed. And silence. For the first time. A silence without echo. Logan was outside now. But what he left behind wasn't just a facility, it was parts of himself. And Site 9 was now closed. Or at least, he thought it was. The northern forests of Montana were silent behind Logan Pierce, as if nothing had ever happened. The Jeep was still there. Covered in pine needles, its windshield still frosted from the night. Logan slowly opened the door as if for a moment, the cold of the metal might call him back to reality. But nothing felt real. He got in. Noticed his hands were still trembling. His eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror, as if someone were still back there. There wasn't. Or maybe now it was part of him. 3 weeks later, Brooklyn, New York. Logan was staring blankly at his computer screen in his apartment. His inbox was full. Agencies, websites, YouTube channels, all asking the same thing. Is the recording from inside the facility real? What was the echo protocol? Were the things you saw hallucinations? Why can't the federal government locate Site 9? And the most terrifying one. Have you ever experienced a delay while looking in the mirror? Logan couldn't answer any of them. Because, aside from the final log on the recorder, everything else was gone. The files were corrupted. The footage covered in black screen. Only his voice remained. And his voice sounded too calm. He realized it one night while looking in the mirror. The Logan in the audio wasn't the same as the Logan in the reflection. 7 days later, New Mexico. A small article appeared in a local newspaper. In a desert town, a lone technician working in an abandoned observatory claimed his reflection answered him and locked himself in quarantine. His final sentence read, "The one talking to me speaks 1 second after me. It knows my future." The article disappeared a few days later. The site was shut down. The technician placed under psychological care. But Logan couldn't sleep that night. Because in his dream he saw Hale. Still eyeless, still connected to the system. But this time not in the dark. He was inside a mirror. And he whispered to Logan. Echoes moved slowly, Logan. But they always spread. Following week, Logan's final recording never released. I am Logan Pierce. If someone finds this recording, here's what you need to know. Echo didn't shut down. Echo was inside. It came with me. Sometimes it speaks while I'm awake. Sometimes it writes my dreams. Sometimes I can't hear myself in my own voice. And sometimes, when I look in the mirror, it still blinks. Before me. Without me knowing. 1 month later, Federal Report/classified file. File name, Echo 9/Pierce incident. Status, open. Note, Logan Pierce is missing. Last seen, August 17, 2025. Last detected digital activity. Webcam recording, user's eyes not synchronized with screen. Additional info, same sync error observed in 3 terminated operators from Site 9 experiments. And the final line as if scribbled by hand at the bottom of the report. Some doors should stay closed forever. Dr. Everett Hale. File closed. Not only the secrets of a facility were uncovered, but also how fragile and mutable the human mind and identity truly are. Logan Pierce may no longer be in our world. But Echo is here. Far away. Or perhaps very close. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video.